Our next speaker is Tanya Golash-Boza. She is a writer, speaker, teacher. She tells stories of people and systems to help colleagues, students, readers, and listeners understand how racism and capitalism structure our lives. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Should we move it up a little bit, or is it okay right there? Okay, perfect. All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We are here today to honor Paul Robeson, a giant, a singer, an actor, a lawyer, an athlete, a scholar, a freedom fighter. A man who understood that art is not separate from struggle, that culture is not separate from justice, that the voice is not just something we use to entertain, that the voice is something we use to tell the truth. Paul Robeson once said, "The artist must elect to fight for freedom or fight for slavery," and he made his choice. He chose freedom. He chose workers. He chose Black people. He chose the poor, colonized people pushed aside by empire, capitalism, and white supremacy. And today, we gather in that spirit. We gather to tell the truth. We gather to say, Washington, D.C. did not become unequal by accident. The racial wealth gap did not fall from the sky. The displacement of Black people from this neighborhood did not just happen. Gentrification did not begin when the coffee shops arrived. Before gentrification, there was disinvestment. Before the cranes, there was redlining. Before the luxury condos, these schools across the street were starved of resources. Before Black families were pushed out, Black communities were denied the investments they deserved. And today I want to tell one family's story, the story of the Hinton family, because that story helps us to see the whole system clearly. In 1953, Dr. Clarence Hinton, an African-American physician, bought a home at 13th and Farragut Streets Northwest, just a few blocks from here. When he bought that home, he was the first Black person on that block. Dr. Hinton did what they tell us to do. He worked hard, he got an education, he became a doctor, he bought a home in this neighborhood. He did everything right. And what happened? A few years after Dr. Hinton moved into this neighborhood, all of the white residents on his neighborhood left. That's what we call white flight. But let's be clear, white flight was not just personal preference. It was political, economic, institutional. It was banks, real estate, schools, and public policy all working together to say that when Black people moved into this neighborhood, investments moved out. But Black people didn't make those homes less valuable. Black children did not make these schools less worthy. Black families did not create the disinvestment that devastated this neighborhood. The city did that. The banks did that. Congress did that. The Hinton family moved into this neighborhood when Black home ownership was growing across the city. Between 1940 and 1970, the number of Black homeowners in Washington, D.C. increased sixfold. By 1970, there were nearly 45,000 Black homeowners in this city. That should have been a wealth building story. That should have been a story of stability, of Black families buying homes, sending their children to good schools, building equity, and passing wealth along to the next generation. But y'all know that's not what happened. Why didn't that happen? Black homeownership did not produce Black wealth in the same way that white homeownership in the suburbs produced white wealth. Because white neighborhoods received investment, Black neighborhoods received disinvestment. White families got federally subsidized loans, Black families got redlined, white neighborhoods got well-funded schools, white homeowners, black neighborhoods got overcrowded classrooms and broken down buildings. White homeowners saw their property values rise because public money and private money followed them to the suburbs. Black homeowners were told to be proud of home ownership while the city pulled resources away from the communities where they lived. And that was not a market failure, that was a policy choice. And no institution shows this more clearly than Roosevelt High School. Roosevelt High School served this community. It served the Hinton family. Dr. Hinton's daughters attended Roosevelt High. And Roosevelt High School tells the story of what happened to black families in Washington, D.C. Roosevelt High was desegregated in 1954. Before desegregation, Roosevelt High was an excellent school. It was called a blue ribbon school. It was known for high standards. It sent a large percentage of its students to college. When Bonnie Benson, the daughter of Ezra Taft Benson, the Secretary of Agriculture, enrolled in Roosevelt in 1955, she and her family celebrated the school as a model of integration. She took the school yearbook with her on a trip to Europe, proudly showing off photographs of black and white children playing together and learning together here at Roosevelt High. But I don't think she told her friends in Europe that when black students started attending Roosevelt High in 1954, they closed the school swimming pool and kept it closed for 5 decades. And every year that Bonnie attended Roosevelt, more white students left. By 1958, Roosevelt was nearly 80% black. Soon it became virtually all black. And here's the part we have to say out loud. Roosevelt High School did not decline in quality because black students arrived. It declined because investment left this school. In the 1950s and 1960s, Roosevelt continued to provide an excellent education to extraordinary black students. Dr. Hinton sent his daughter Audrey there in 1961. Roosevelt produced brilliance and leadership and excellence. Roosevelt produced black women who have changed the nature of this city. Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson graduated from Roosevelt High School in 1964 and became the first black woman to earn a doctorate at MIT. Sharon Pratt attended Roosevelt and became the mayor of our city. Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis attended Roosevelt and became president of Southeastern University. So don't let anyone ever tell you that the problem with Roosevelt was the students. The students were brilliant. The teachers were capable. The families were committed. The community was strong. The problem was that the city stopped investing money in this school. As Roosevelt and DC's public school system became majority black, the schools were abandoned by the city. As the city's school population grew from 100,000 to 150,000 students between 1954 and 1970, Congress did not provide additional funding needed to educate these children. By 1992, Roosevelt High School ranked near the bottom of all DC public high schools for its promotion rate. 1 in 3 students who enrolled in Roosevelt High did not graduate. In 1992, only 33 of Roosevelt's 915 students enrolled in advanced placement classes and not a single one passed. That's what happens when black communities are told to survive on pride, while other communities receive money, infrastructure, loans, parks, libraries, and well-funded schools. And then came the next insult, when disinvestment produced unemployment, instability, and gun violence. The city did not respond by reinvesting in schools, jobs, recreation, housing, libraries, or youth programs. The city responded with policing. The city responded with prisons. The city responded with the war on drugs. By 1990, half of black male youth in DC were unemployed. By 1997, half of black male youth in DC were under the control of the criminal legal system. Black neighborhoods were denied investment, then punished for the consequences of that denial. And that is the cycle that we are here to break. Because what happened next is what we now call gentrification. After decades of disinvestment, this neighborhood has become profitable again. But profitable for whom? The Hinton family bought their home in 1953 for about $20,000. They lived there for 45 years. When they sold their home in 1998, they sold it for $230,000. And that might sound like a lot, but over 45 years, once you account for inflation, it was not wealth creation. If they had taken $20,000 and invested it in the stock market in 1953, 1953 in an index fund, that would have added up to $5 million by 1998, but it didn't. They got $230,000. And then let's look at what happened next. The people who bought the Hinton home lived in it for 20 years and sold it for $700,000. Again, not a lot of money on a 20-year investment. 5 months later, investors bought it and sold it again for $1.3 million. In less than half of a year, investors extracted more wealth from that home than the Hinton family gained in 45 years. That's not appreciation, that's extraction. That is the story of racial capitalism in one house. That is the story of gentrification before gentrification. Black families bought home in this beautiful neighborhood. The city disinvested, property values stagnated, schools declined, young people were criminalized, families were pushed out. Then, when white buyers and investors returned, suddenly the neighborhood has value again. But the value was always here. The people are the value. The families are the value. The children of the Roosevelt High School are the value. The black homeowners of Petworth are the value. The problem is that this country has a long history of refusing to recognize value when it is attached to black life. And that's why we have to say it plainly. The racial wealth gap is not a bug in the system of racial capitalism, it is a feature. It's what happens when a society builds wealth for some through the dispossession of others. It's what happened when homes in white neighborhoods are treated as assets, while homes in black neighborhoods are treated as risks. And Paul Robeson understood this. He understood that the struggle was never just about representation. It was never just about being allowed on the stage or into the classroom or into the voting booth. It was about power. It was about land. It was about labor and dignity. And that's why it matters that we are standing here today. This statue standing in the spirit of Paul Robeson, which is in front of Roosevelt High School. This is why we are here to unveil this plaque and rededicate Alan Ozeki Nelson's "Here I Stand, Blackballed, Red-Baited, and Whited Out," the spirit of Paul Robeson. Because Robeson was blackballed, he was red-baited, he was whited out, but he was not silenced. And that's the lesson for us today. They tried to erase Robeson because he told the truth about racism, capitalism, colonialism, and empire. They tried to punish him because he stood with workers, he stood with black people, with poor people, with colonized people, with everyone fighting to be free. But Robeson knew ordinary people cannot wait around for liberation to be handed down from above. We have to build it together. And that's why the songs that he sang mattered. In the labor anthem, Song of the United Front, the call is simple. March on in the Workers' United Front, for you are a worker too. That message belongs here today because housing justice is a workers' issue. School investment is a workers' issue. Displacement is a workers' issue. The racial wealth gap is a workers' issue. And the fight for Black Washington is a fight for everyone who believes that human beings matter more than profit. Paul Robeson used his voice to insist on a freer world. Alan Ozeki Nelson used his art to insist that Robeson not be forgotten. And today we use our voices to say, we remember. We remember Robeson. We remember the families who built this city. We remember the people who were blackballed, red-baited, whited out, priced out, pushed out, and written out. And we remember the people that lived here before all of this happened, the Nacotchtank people. And we say no more, and we're still here, we're still fighting, and we're not leaving. Thank you.